So I'm going to be showing you how to get a 4 on an ERQ that compares and contrasts how the events in two fables lead to a theme. So the question that I have is, the theme of a fox and his skin and the wolf and the goat is selfishness can have negative consequences. Part A says, identify the events in a fox and his skin that lead to this theme. Part B, identify the events in the wolf and the goat that lead to this theme. And Part C, compare and contrast how the events in these two fables lead to this theme. So really quickly, I'm going to go over the point values with you and remind you that Part A is going to be worth 1 point because you are identifying one or two major events that lead to this theme from this story. Part B is also going to be worth 1 point because you're identifying one or two major events from the other story that leads to the theme. And then Part C is going to be worth 2 points. It has that word "and" in there. That should be a clue that you have to do more than one thing. You're going to compare, tell a similarity, and contrast, tell a difference about how the events in the two fables lead to this theme. So we're going to start off with Part A. Part A says, identify the events in a fox and his skin that lead to this theme. So if I think back to rap, my first part of rap is to restate. So I'm going to look for what is this question asking me to do, and then what words can I use in the question to help me start off my answer. This question is asking me to identify an event, so I need to say one event is. I'm going to use some words from the question here and say, I'm going to say one event in, I'm going to give the title, a fox in his skin that leads to the theme is. Now notice I'm changing a few of these words by just adding a letter or two, just so that it makes sense. So one event in a fox and his skin that leads to this theme. Now notice you're given the theme up here, so don't try to come up with your own. Is blank. And then I'm going to go back and look in my story and think about where was there evidence that someone was being selfish and when did that have negative consequences for someone. So if I go back to a fox in his skin, I'm remembering that this story is about Li Xing, and Li Xing is wanting a new coat for his wife that is made out of a fox skin. And he tries to get it from a fox here in this story, and in the end his negative consequence is that he's chased by wild dogs, which you can see down here. So I underline this because this is the negative consequence of what happens to him because he's being selfish. So it says up here that he was trying to get a coat for his bride. So I can underline anything up here that says his bride dreamed of having a new coat, he wanted a new coat from a fox, he asked the fox, can you give me your skin so that she may have one? So that's his selfishness. This is his negative consequence. So I'm going to sum that up in my own words and say, one event that leads to the theme is that Li Xing asks a fox for his skin to use for his wife's coat. The fox gets away by tricking the man. And what are those negative consequences? And Li Xing is chased by wild dogs. Now we want to prove it here, so I'm going to find, what paragraph did I find that in? I count 1, 2, 3. I found this in paragraph 3. Proving it, hashtag prove it, don't forget it. Part B is going to be similar. Again, I'm going to use those similar words because it's also asking me to identify events just from the other story. So again, I'm going to use events, I'm going to use in, I'm going to use the wolf and the goat. that leads to this theme. All words that I should spell correctly. So again, restating, one event in the wolf and the goat, underline that because that's a title, that leads to this theme is, again, I want to look back in my text and think about where was someone selfish and when did that have negative consequences for them. So thinking back to this story, the wolf is wanting to eat the goat, and he tries to trick the goat by having her come down to where he was. That is his selfish action. He's wanting to get the goat for himself. So in the end, what are his negative consequences? He also is chased by wild dogs that overhear their conversation. So down here it says, a few dogs in the distance overheard the conversation between the wolf and the goat. They thought it was best to help the situation. They ran at the wolf with their threatening barks. And I found what he was wanting up here is that he smacked his lips at the thought of a fine goat for dinner. So I have my evidence about how he was being selfish and what happened to him. I'm going to put that in my own words here for the ERQ. One event in The Wolf and the Goat that leads to this theme is that the wolf wants the goat for his dinner, and tries to trick her to come to him. But that goat isn't dumb, and the wild dogs overhear the conversation. So we're going to say, wild dogs overhear the conversation and help the goat by chasing the wolf away. Again, hashtag prove it. Here we go. Where did we find this at? I found these events in paragraphs 1 and 4. All right, so I've restated, I've answered all parts of this, I've proved it, I'm ready to go on to part C. So part C says to compare and contrast. If you remember, compare means to tell similarities and contrast means to tell difference. I just need to tell one similarity and one difference to give the points for this. So I'm going to think about how were these events similar and how are they different. One way that I noticed that they're similar is that in both stories, the main character, the selfish character, gets chased by wild dogs. That's their consequence. And one way they're different is that they're asking for different things. So the fox is asking for a skin, and the wolf is asking for the goat for his dinner. So one similarity, one difference that I have in my mind, I'm going to go ahead and write those down. Again, restating, I want to use one similarity is, I could say one way to compare is between these events is that in both stories, the selfish character gets chased by wild dogs, now I'm going to give my difference. Starting off with that sentence starter, one difference is that, now I have two parts here for a difference. In a fox and his skin, Li Shing wants the fox's skin, in the wolf and the goat the wolf wants the whole fox for dinner. And there we go. I have told a similarity and a difference using those great sentence starters. One similarity, one difference is, and using evidence from my text. Notice I didn't just say one similarity is they're both selfish. I actually used specific evidence in the events of the two stories to give for my answer. So make sure that you do that as well. All right, go ahead and put it in the turn-in basket if you are finished and corrected.